Greetings, everyone. Terrorists recently attacked a gas facility in Algeria, and about 37 foreign workers were killed, and some 29 terrorists, and 3 of them were captured and had a lot to tell authorities after they undoubtedly had some pretty serious punishment for them to get them to talk. And they said that told them quite a lot about what happened, but here we see these people really are being sponsored for the most part from Iran, the biblical king of the south. But also at the same time, I'll show you that Germany is making strong inroads into Africa itself. And both of these powers, the king of the south and Germany being the king of the north in Bible prophecy, along with 9 other nations, and they are racing toward getting as much control of Africa as they possibly can. Now they are on a track to inevitably clash with one another, and that I'm surprised that more authorities in the world, more watchmen, don't see that. But I'm going to show you today that a great prophecy of your Bible is about to be fulfilled, and you need to watch what is happening in the Middle East and in Africa. Notice what the New York Times wrote about that attack in Algeria. This is January the 22nd. Several Egyptian members of the squad of militants that laid bloody siege to an Algerian gas complex. Notice several Egyptian members. Well, that's interesting. That's some of them, they're from Egypt. And it goes on to say that that happened last week, also took part in the deadly attack on the United States mission in Libya, or in Benghazi, in September, a senior Algerian official said Tuesday. That's what these terrorists are apparently telling them. And now, again, the second paragraph here, the Egyptians involved in both attacks were killed by Algerian forces during the 4-day ordeal that ended the deaths of at least 38 hostages and 29 kidnappers, the official said. But 3 of the militants were captured alive, and one of them described the Egyptians' role in both assaults under interrogation by the Algerian security services, the official said. And I'm quite sure it was interrogation considerably stronger than waterboarding, which we call torture in some quarters in the U.S. But what is happening here? Now, I'll tell you, it's something we have prophesied for a long, long time, because we told you, I've been personally proclaiming it for nearly 20 years, that radical Islam was going to take over in Egypt and get a lot of control of Egypt. Now here, that is exactly what happened. Now we have the Muslim Brotherhood in there, people that are terrorists and that hate Israel. After that happened, I also proclaimed that Egypt was going to then work to help overtake and conquer Libya, which they've just about done. And these Egyptians were right there in that Benghazi attack, and now they also had these same Egyptians attacking in Algeria, but then they all were killed because the Algerians know better how to handle terrorists than we do. But we have been proclaiming that all the way through, and you can just see from Egypt, all of this is spreading over northern Africa, and they're trying to take over Algeria now, but they're not going to be able to, because Algeria has a strong supporter in Germany. And that is going to make a big difference. It's going to make a big difference. Here's what the New York Times continued to say in that same article. The Algerian official focused on the chaos unleashed by the recent uprisings throughout the region, leaving large ungoverned areas where extremists can flourish. Quote, "This is the result of the Arab Spring, which we have supported so vigorously in the U.S. and Britain." But he says this is a result of the Arab Spring, or he would probably call it the Arab Nightmare, But this is the result of the Arab Spring, the official said, who spoke on condition of anonymity because investigations into the hostage crisis were still underway. Quote, I hope the Americans are conscious of this. I hope the Americans are learning something from this, is what he means. Because America has caused the downfall of Egypt to radical Islam more than any other nation. And they've caused the downfall or the worsening of terrorism in Libya than any other nation. And now the terrorists are encouraged, and they're trying to take over just great chunks of Africa, and are doing a pretty good job, but they're also beginning to face some opposition from Germany and what is called the European Union. The article continues, Algeria was firmly opposed to the Western intervention to help topple Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi in Libya in 2011. They knew he was a dictator, but he wasn't causing anything like the problems that are coming out of Libya now. And America was the main power that overthrew the Libyans. What is wrong with our foreign policy? Well, just about everything, it seems. Algerian official says the militants who seized the gas field traveled through Niger and Libya. Why, of course, whose border is only some 30 miles from the plant at Amenas. Mohammed Lamine, the militant leading the attack at the site, had purchased arms for the assault in the Libyan capital, Tripoli, the senior official said. Now there you have another nation sponsoring terror. Another nation sponsoring terror in the world, as well as Egypt. And soon Ethiopia is going to fall into that camp, because it's prophesied in your Bible. You watch and see if it doesn't. He concludes in this article, he defended the tough Algerian military assault during the standoff and dismissed criticism by foreign leaders that they were not informed of it in advance. Now, I suppose America was one of those complaining because they weren't informed in advance, but who is going to wait for America to solve a crisis like that where terrorists have taken over? And they know that nothing was done in Benghazi at all. It still hasn't been done. Is anybody going to wait for America to solve a terrorist problem like that? Of course not. The way America handles it encourages more of those attacks. When are we going to wake up and see that? Now here is Algeria, still an American ally, trying to enlighten them, trying to educate them about what they're doing that is wrong. And now we have recently had these hearings on Benghazi, but very little comes out about what really happened.
What difference at this point does it make?
And in the American people, well, they weren't told very much of anything about what happened. And they weren't even allowed to have those who were there on the ground tell them anything, not so far. And yet, like 4 days after this attack, the people that were there are talking to the media. Why not from Benghazi? Well, does somebody have something to hide? Well, again, we've made a lot of mistakes in foreign policy, and both Democrats and Republicans have. But somebody has to be held accountable for these things, or, we are causing just gigantic problems in the Middle East and Africa because of our wrong-headed foreign policy and our weakness, which is deplorable. But is anybody listening? Do we really care? More violence is coming, but let me show you why it's a different situation in Algeria. Quote, Algeria is one of the largest exports of light, sweet crude oil in the world and a significant natural gas exporter to Europe. The United States is the largest consumer of Algerian crude oil, consuming about 30% of exports, or approximately 375,000 barrels per day. But it doesn't seem to bother us that somebody might cut off that source. The article continues, Europe consumes another 40% of Algerian exports, with Spain and Italy also relying heavily on Algeria, Europe's second largest supplier after Russia, for their natural gas needs. Now, do you think Germany is going to stand back and do nothing while the terrorists take over Algeria? No, they're not. I think you're going to find Algeria getting a lot of help from Europe, and especially Germany. But with all of that fuel coming from that country, you know Europe and Germany has to be very much concerned, and everybody knows that Germany is the actual leader financially in Europe today, and that gives them a lot of power in other areas as well. In spite of the fact that they were nothing but a pile of trash after World War II. And we prophesied that that would all change in a few years, and has it ever? We prophesied it when Germany was nothing but a pile of rubble. We prophesied it. Herbert Armstrong was prophesying that to the world. And from the end of World War II until his death in 1986. And we have continued ever since that time. We've continued the work. But there's a strong man coming on the scene, Daniel 8 says, and he's going to get control of Europe, and he's going to do a lot of damage in the world. That's what your Bible prophesies, and we have a Daniel booklet that we'll give you for free. All of our literature is free, and it will explain that to you. We also have a book on the Holy Roman Empire that will explain it, if you don't have it. The terrorist leader was from Mali, and he orchestrated the whole thing, but the terrorists have taken over 2/3 of Mali. Those in the Iranian camp, let's say. Radical Islam. Now they're getting closer and closer to some very strongholds of Germany in Central Africa, in the old Congo area, and on the shores of Eastern Africa. And we'll give you a map to show you what I'm talking about, to explain that to you. But Germany has great power in Africa, even military power that most people don't even know about. And they're not about to give it up, at least willingly, without a lot of fighting, that's for sure. And I think even when the French planes flew into Mali, they're, after all, a part of the European Union, led by Germany. And I'm sure they were very much encouraged to go into Mali, because that's getting closer to the German strongholds in Africa. And they have an air force there and soldiers, in spite of the fact that they've just gotten out of a disastrous war over by helping America topple Gaddafi in Libya. So, who is behind all of those terrorist attacks? Well, the king of the South is, Iran is. We've made that clear for years. But they're being opposed now by Germany on many fronts. And you are going to see those two powers clash very soon. And I'm talking about like a year or 2 or 3. That's what I'm talking about. You watch it and see that it doesn't happen. Daniel 11 and verse 40 is about to be fulfilled, where it talks about a clash from the king of the south and the king of the north. And that king of the north is from Europe, and the king of the south is from the Middle East. It's Iran leading radical Islam. And we have pointed that out to people for many years. But you need to watch these things very closely and see if what we're telling you doesn't come to pass, because so many prophecies already have. We know we were right because we've recorded it and we've told you so and proved that to you. Here's a one of the major news sources of Germany, Deutsche Welle, and here's what they stated in 2008, February 17th. Europe is paying more attention to both the potential and the problems of Africa. German President Horst Kohler recently made his 5th trip to Africa as Germany's president. Germany has been very present in Africa and is increasing its activities there. End of quote. German Foreign Undersecretary George Baumgarten commented, quote, "In the future, we'll be increasingly connected to nations in Africa by the need for natural resources and other interests in terms of development. We've been active for a long time in Africa. But in 2008, we're beginning a special program. We're looking for more dialogue with Africa." And so is Iran. Only they're looking for dialogue maybe in a different way. But nevertheless, these two countries are about to clash. And that's all prophesied in Daniel 11, verse 40. Mr. Armstrong talked about it when he was alive until his death in 1986. And all we're doing really is reminding everybody of what he said, and then God has revealed more to us today so we understand it even better. But never, ever in the history of mankind has so much prophecy been fulfilled so fast. It's racing along. This is not the world you knew 10 years ago, or even 5 for that matter. It's very different. And all of this violence you see in Africa is just a prelude to the fulfillment of Daniel 11 and verse 40. That's all it is. It's leading up to it. It's introducing this great prophecy in your Bible that Daniel said is only, that whole book is only for the end time and no other time in history. So who knows and who understands that book today? Well, I defy you to find anybody else on this earth that understands it, except this work. It just isn't out there in any other place, and the whole world is asleep as to what is going on here. But you see what happens after when you don't do anything about the terrorist attack in Benghazi and let them kill our ambassador and 3 other people, and nothing has been done that anybody can see since, some 4 months later. Nobody sees anything that's been done. What's wrong with our foreign policy? Do we have a foreign policy? We do tell our soldiers in Afghanistan to be nice to the Taliban terrorists. And they know what that is. When they see such statements as that, these terrorists know that's a statement of weakness. They know that. They absolutely know it. And so do nations in the Middle East and Northern Africa and all over Africa. They're learning exactly what a strong foreign policy is versus a weak one. They know that. And they see the result of a weak one every week. So what is happening in Algeria is a sign that radical Islam is doing everything they can to take over Africa. And we're in the times of the Gentiles now, and you're about to see these 2 Gentile powers clash and lead us into World War III and all the horrors you can imagine from that nuclear World War III. And Jesus Christ says in Matthew 24 and 20, verse 21 and 22 that he didn't intervene. There would be no flesh saved alive. You can be sure we're in that time that Christ was prophesying. And you can be absolutely sure he's about to return to this earth and solve all of our terrifying problems and give us peace on this earth and in the universe forever. Until next week, this is Gerald Flurry. Goodbye, friends.